name is Yuliia and you are watching U Multicultural's Community Hour. In this segment, we are talking about civic issues in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I would like to introduce our guest, Anna Shypilova. She is coordinator of the Reading Room and Resource Center Oseredok. Hello, Anna. Thanks for being here with us today.
Hi, Yuliia. Thank you for having me here.
Today we are talking about Ukrainian culture in Canada and why this is so important to preserve it. To begin, we need to let our audience know who you are and what you are doing. So, Anna, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, as you previously mentioned, I'm working in Ukrainian Cultural and Educational Center Oseredok, and also I'm a student at University of Manitoba.
Now let's talk about you and your connection to Oseredok. So when did you join and why?
I came to Canada on 1st of March 2 years ago, so I'm here almost a year and a half, and I joined Oseredok right away. So my first day at Oseredok was in May, and yeah, I started as my position, so I started as Reading Room and Resource Center Coordinator.
Why did you decide to join Oseredok?
It was important for me to be connected to Ukrainian culture, and I knew that I can bring something new to the center as a student, and most important, like as someone who recently came from Ukraine.
Okay. Can you tell us more about Oseredok and your main mission?
I think my mission of Oseredok is to bring awareness about Ukrainian culture and first of all preserve culture that was brought here through all the ways of immigration, and also to bring new Ukrainian culture.
Okay. Your center has many different program, exhibition, workshop to raise awareness of Ukrainian culture. Tell us more about one of the most significant in your opinion.
One of the most fascinating events that is going to take place at the end of October, it's a new exhibition. It's Immersive World of Ukrainian Art. So no, I think a lot of people heard about Van Gogh exhibition. This is something similar, but with Ukrainian modern art and also with some of the artifacts from our collections. And there's going to be a segment about war as well. And this is, I guess, the biggest exhibition that I remember at Oseredok. And we are really excited to announce it.
Okay. Have there been any changes or additional purposes in Oseredok since the beginning of the war in Ukraine?
I guess so. The goal of Oseredok changed for sure, just because we are focusing on raising funds for Ukraine and to help Ukrainians. And also, I guess now we are mostly talking about war, and we are also starting Ukrainian classes as they are becoming more and more popular.
Okay, and what programs do you have for newcomers, Ukrainians?
For newcomers, now we're starting our second group of English classes for newcomers. Mm-hmm. And we also had a few workshops on settlement, how to settle in Winnipeg, how to find housing, and all of that.
Thank you. And despite the fact that we are in Canada, Ukrainians are trying to preserve their culture and our traditions. So how important, in your opinion, is to preserve Ukrainian culture while living in Canada?
I think we need to distinguish Ukrainian and Ukrainian Canadian culture first, because of course people who come here, they are trying to preserve Ukrainian culture that they brought from Ukraine as an immigrants here, but also Ukrainian Canadian culture is well preserved here. So people are taking care of that, and they're still passing their traditions and customs to their kids, to their grandkids, and that's what I was really excited to see that when I first came to Canada.
And in your opinion, what is the main difference between the Ukrainian and the Ukrainian Canadian culture?
So Ukrainian culture and Ukrainian Canadian culture, they obviously have their difference because they were formed in different environment. Ukrainian culture here, it was formed under the influence of Canadian culture as well, because Canada is multicultural. And I guess it was formed differently, as well as I'm working with literature, and you can obviously see the difference, because people that are in Ukrainian Canadian environment, Ukrainian Canadian community, they were trying to talk about history, about their way of moving here to Canada and how that changed them. So they're mostly focusing on history and culture that was formed here. But regarding the culture that is in Ukraine, it's just different, just because it's a different places. We still have a lot in common because it's still same Ukrainian culture, but it was formed under different influences.
So how do you think, should we save Ukrainian, Canadian culture, or just Ukrainian?
I guess that the other goal that I'm trying to bring to Oseredok is we cannot not distinguish Ukrainian Canadian culture, but at the same time, I wanted to blend it, because now there is still an interaction between Ukrainian and Ukrainian Canadian culture, but they are kind of separated. Mm-hmm. Because I think that Ukrainian Canadian culture is mostly about preservation. Mm-hmm. And they are trying to preserve everything that was brought here many years ago. But in Ukraine, that's actually the difference between Ukrainian and Ukrainian Canadian culture. That in Ukraine, people are trying to bring something new, something westernized, if we like to call it. So we are bringing a lot of different things to music, to art, to literature from Europe, from North America as well. So if we can blend those two things as Ukrainian Canadian culture, I think that's going to be really successful. Because I want to show Ukrainian Canadian community that it's important to bring new Ukrainian customs, new Ukrainian music and art here, because that's a part of preservation as well. We need to add up more and more to preserve what we have. We cannot stick only to the old Ukrainian culture.
Is there another way to reduce the difference between Ukrainian and Ukrainian Canadian culture?
I think it's kind of reducing right now, since we have a lot of newcomers who came to Canada recently, and that's what helped Ukrainian Canadian community to learn different things about Ukrainians who just recently came. And also, I think one of the things that will help to do that is, an example is the Immersive exhibition that we're going to have at Oseredok, because initially it started as a Ukrainian project that was first launched there, and now it travels to Canada. So that's another way how we can introduce culture here in Canada from Ukraine, and to show what was going on there and how it can be introduced here.
Okay. Now let's talk about the language issue, because it's one of the main reasons why the Ukrainian community has quarrel within the community. So Ukrainians who continue to speak Russian get a lot of negativity to their address. In your opinion, is it worth focusing now on the language issue, or is it important to remain friendly within the community?
I find it important to address an issue that there's still Ukrainians who are speaking Russian, but personally for me, when I was forced to speak Ukrainian back in Ukraine in school, for example, I refused to do that. So for me, I didn't want to, just because I was forced and there was something that I had to do. But now when it's my choice, and I did that choice, and I'm speaking Ukrainian on a daily basis with my friends, with my parents, mm-hmm. and I'm trying not to force anyone. And I guess that's the only one way we can let Ukrainians who still speak Russian make their decisions. Because not everyone feels comfortable, because what the problem in Ukrainian community is that, back in Ukraine, I guess, is that when you're trying to speak Ukrainian and you're making mistakes, it's not really okay. So people are judging you for that. But now Ukrainian community is more friendly with regard to that. They are supporting people who are trying to change from Russian to Ukrainian. And yeah, I don't think we need to put any negativity on that, but we still need to emphasize on the importance of Ukrainian language, but not by forcing people to do that.
So you don't judge people who are continue to speak Russian even when in Ukraine the war?
From my family, half of my family is from east part of Ukraine, from Kharkiv, and a lot of them are speaking Russian, just because they were growing up speaking Russian. They were studying Russian at school, at university. So for them, it's that's what they used for their whole life, and they didn't know Ukrainian. Of course, now they are trying to learn, but they're still speaking Russian because it's not that easy to change your language when you're in your 40s and 50s. And also here, even here in University of Manitoba, I had a lot of students like who I'm studying with who came from different cities of Ukraine, and they were never taught Ukrainian. They were going to school studying Russian. And that was really, I was surprised because for me, I was studying Ukrainian and as I was growing up speaking Russian, but at the same time at university, at school, I was always speaking Ukrainian. So we cannot judge people just because we don't know what their backgrounds and we don't know what people were growing up with. And I do find it important to show people that probably you need to start talking in Ukrainian, especially right now, but not to force and not to judge them.
Okay. I noted that Oseredok is going to do Ukrainian language classes. Can you tell us more about it? And this is course for Ukrainians or Canadians who are willing to learn Ukrainian language?
That's a really good question. We decided to do Ukrainian classes just because we had a lot of requests and people were willing to learn Ukrainian. Most of their requests are from Canadians, of course. They are trying to learn Ukrainian, but recently we received a lot of requests from newcomers who are speaking Russian, and they made their choice to transfer to Ukrainian. And so they're going to be for both.
Okay, and how to enroll in a Ukrainian language class?
We usually post information on our social media, but there is a registration form on Oseredok's website, so you can just fill in the form and you can enroll into their class.
Okay, and now I want to ask you the best way to preserve Ukrainian culture, in your opinion.
The best way to preserve Ukrainian culture. I think what Oseredok is doing is trying to do different projects, to present the project to people and to show people that they know and they are aware of Ukrainian culture. And so they know about it, and that knowledge is going to be passed by generation to different generations. That's how we can do it. It's like a more personal way and do this. But regarding general preservation is preservation of documents, having good facilities for archives, and that's what all we need to do, because we need to preserve all the artifacts and all the things that we have in collections in Ukrainian Center.
Can you tell us more about programs that Oseredok do for preservation of Ukrainian culture?
Now the biggest project that we have is digitalization of all the archives, all the photos that we have and the collections, just because now it's easier to save them there and to store them there, just because we want to preserve them for a long time. So digitalization project is aimed at storing and to find a place to store the collections, archives in one place that can last for a longer time, most likely, hopefully forever. But because sometimes when we have photos that are stored in a particular format that we don't have technologies to reveal those photos, like tapes, for example. Some of the tapes are so old and there is no particular facilities to do that. So we're trying to digitalize them just to make sure that we have those photos stored at Oseredok. As well, the same works with our newspapers and with our different paper documents, just because some of them can be damaged and it's really hard to preserve them in their spaces where we have all their archives, so it's better to store them online and better to store them in digital format.
How many people is working on this project?
Right now, I'm not sure how many people are working on this project, but this project is divided into parts. For example, we have Bobarsky collection, we have Koshit's collection, so they're mostly divided into different collections. And also one of the digitalizing projects right now is also a library project. We're trying to find the rarest books that we have at Oseredok and store and work on them first, and also preserve those. So there are kind of 3 projects. I guess there are like 2 people in each project.
And how many Canadians visit your center?
Whew. Well, I don't really know the numbers of how many Canadians visit our center, but recently we have much more people who are visiting Ukrainian Center just because, first of all, they want to donate. They want to know more about Canadian, Ukrainian culture, and also people are trying to know their heritage. So people are interested in their history and they want to know more just because they find it more and more important right now.
And how Canadian now trying to preserve Ukrainian culture?
A lot of people are donating things from their own collections. A lot of people just donating to different projects that we have at Oseredok, even digitalizing project, just because we need those donations to have different facilities for that and to have space for those documents. So yeah, that's our ways that they can help.
So Anna, can you share with us an interesting story that related to Ukrainian newcomers?
I think there are a lot of people who are mad during the summer because I was working a bit more at Oseredok since I didn't have school, but right, one of the people who I do really remember is the girl. She showed up a few times to the library. She was a musician back in Kharkiv. And she was showing up to find some music scores to her to play on piano because she's a pianist. And that was really nice because she was trying to find some folk Ukrainian music, and she was really interested in working in library. And that was really, can I start over, please?
Yeah.
Cut. Okay. So I met a lot of people during summer since I was working a bit more, but one of the people who I remember is the lady. She showed up a few times to the library. She was looking for music scores because she was a pianist back in Ukraine, and she was really interested in folk Ukrainian music, and we were looking for some scores for her, and she said something like, the music is the way she's now dealing with the stress related to war, and that's, I guess, something that I can relate to because I was back in Ukraine. I was in musical school, and playing the piano and singing Ukrainian folk songs are something that kind of connect me back to Ukraine.
What was the most common request Ukrainians reach you?
A lot of Ukrainians are coming to center to ask about our job opportunities, about English classes, because I guess a lot of them, they were forced to come here, and most of them they don't know even basic English, so they are trying to learn something because they need to find their job, they need to find housing, and you cannot do that without English, so a lot of people do ask for that.
How hard is it for Ukrainian newcomer to find a job here in Canada?
The main problem to find a job is English, of course, as I mentioned earlier, because if you don't know English, you cannot find a job. You have to know English when you're applying for a job. That's the most important knowledge that you have to have. But I think it's pretty hard right now because you are under stress and you just ran from war, and you're trying to find something that is related to your degree, and sometimes you cannot do that in Canada because first you have to approve your degree, Ukrainian degree here, which takes a lot of time, and most of the times you have to study one more time. You have to finish this degree and you have to pass certain tests, and that what makes it harder for some people to find a job. So most of them are looking for something that doesn't require their degree, and that can be done with their knowledge that they have.
Okay, immigrant faced with lots of challenges. Based on your experience, what challenges did you face when you first come?
When I first came, I was 18 years old. I had no experience. I was not employed, so it was pretty hard for me to understand their Canadian culture. It was pretty hard for me to get used to how that works here and how am I supposed to find job. And also I was pretty far from my family that I'm close to, and that's the main challenge because you were living with your parents and the whole family together for the whole 18 years and now you're here and you're not relating to Ukraine anymore. You're not speaking your language on a daily basis. So that's what I found hard. But I was trying to be more and more active in Ukrainian community. That's why I got a job in Ukrainian Center. It still helps me to find this connection to Ukraine and not to miss home that much, especially right now when I cannot go back and visit my parents and visit my friends there. And that's what I did. I guess I was trying to keep myself busy. Even though when I didn't have a job, I was trying to do something. I was trying to explore Winnipeg and find different stuff, different activities that I can do, go to the library or to find new people who I can communicate with. That's what I think also can be a good advice for newcomers, because if you don't have a job and you think that you have enough time, a lot of time, just try to explore. Just make connections. That's going to help you in the future. Maybe you'll find new ways to find a job. Maybe you'll find a way to learn something new, and that's the way you will get new opportunities.
Okay, is there another way to feel yourself involved in your community?
Well, I want to say participate as much as you can. Because for me, it was first of all, it was volunteering. It was when war started, I felt really important to bring awareness, and by using my social media. I know that's the simplest way, but that's the way I can do that. When I was talking to my friends from different countries, of course, that was brought into our conversation. A lot of people were asking me, how's your family back in Ukraine? And I could not talk about positive stuff. Obviously, I talked about war and I talked what my family faced, even though I'm not here. I'm still hearing stories from them. So that's what I shared. And I found it important to share those stories from newcomers and their experience. So I guess that's the way to bring awareness around Ukrainian war.
Based on my experience, when I came, it was possible to find a host family, but now it's really difficult for newcomer Ukrainian to find a host family. Does Canadian overwhelmed the amount of help Ukrainians need?
I think everyone is overwhelmed with the amount that Ukrainians actually require, just because they need that help. Not always they're asking for that help, but they actually need that help. Because you are arriving here to Canada or any other country where a lot of immigrants, refugees or newcomers, they came to different European countries, they came to different provinces, and you are overwhelmed with the situation that is in Ukraine. You're trying to go about it somehow. You're trying to deal with your own emotions and feelings, and at the same time you're trying to help, and it makes you feel even worse because you know that sometimes you cannot provide help for everyone, right? How many people can you take into your house? Of course, 5 maximum. You cannot help everyone. So I guess, yes, Canadians are overwhelmed with the amount of help Ukrainians need.
Based on your experience, what would be the advice for newcomer Ukrainians?
As a Ukrainian who came here a few years ago, I guess it's still going to be relevant to those who just recently came to Canada. Keep trying, keep explore culture, be open-minded. I guess that's the most important that I'm trying to emphasize for every single newcomer. Be open-minded. If you're going to still live with Ukrainian mindset here, you're not going to be successful, just because you have to explore real details of Canadian culture, details of the new country that you're living in, just to be able to adapt to the environment that you're living in right now. Because if you are not ready to make changes, even though you kind of changed your life when you came to Canada, right? So it's really important to be open to those changes.
So with that, we are going to conclude today's discussion. Thank you, Anna, for being here with us today.
Thank you. It was really interesting to talk to you.
And thanks our audience for joining us today. We hope you enjoy it. If you like this episode, please like, share and subscribe to see our upcoming episodes.